Toxic shame is something that shows up, and it shows up in so many different flavors in our life. Things like, man, I'm a failure. Things like, I feel gross inside. Things like, I'm just not good enough. Those kind of things are coming from somewhere. And let me tell you something, if you don't get a handle on that, it's problems. What do I mean? Toxic shame is a reality that hits all of us at different points in our life. And if it's left undealt with, it can be deadly. It suffocates our relationships. It silences creativity. And you know what else it does? It strangles any potential you have moving forward with your hopes and dreams. And when this kind of shame is left unchecked and it's allowed to escalate to a high level, you know what happens? It makes you believe that your life isn't worth living. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. Shame is one of the oldest and most effective weapons that Satan has in his arsenal. And it's what the enemy uses to take people out. And it happens all the time. And the reason why it happens is because it disconnects you from the love of God, the love of the forgiving God. Jesus describes the enemy and himself like this. He says, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, and I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly." Now, I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, I want to feel that abundant life. I want to experience that abundant life with Jesus. I don't want to experience the shame, and the worthlessness, and the failure, and the gross like that. I don't want a part of that. So the question then becomes, how do I get from point A to point B? If I'm someone that's struggling right now with this level of shame, what can I do? How do I connect with Jesus in a way where that is going to go away? Because that's actually what takes place. And if you watch to the end of this video, this is what I want to describe for you. My name is JD Goding, and this is Understanding the Bible. And the reason that I started this channel was to take small amounts of text and to simply mine the gold out of it. And the reason that I want to do that is to help you in your relationship with Jesus so that you would fall more in love with him. And if you wouldn't mind, hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Now, there's a story in the Bible that speaks directly into the same kind of shame that we're talking about today. And even though this story took place 2,000 years ago, the principles that come out of this story are timeless. So this is something that applies not only to them, but to us today. Now, the guy in the story that we're talking about today is a guy who's been pushed completely to the outer parts of his society. Nobody wants to deal with him. Everybody can't stand them. They look at him as filthy. They look at him as dirty. And ultimately, they look at him as someone who's come under God's judgment. It's a pretty harsh culture, I know. But what happens is a blind person cannot get a job because they can't see, right? So this guy is forced to beg. Now, when you beg, what do? You take some kind of a change dish, you go and you sit out, and you just hope that somebody's going to put something in that for you that day. This is a town where everybody knows everybody, and that means that this guy is stigmatized as he's the blind beggar. And if you're under the judgment of God in their eyes, then I would say you're living a pretty rough life. Now imagine how this guy would have been mocked and ridiculed and made fun of, and think about what he would have felt inside. Every time he leaves his house, he's made fun of, he's jeered. This means he would have been isolated on the inside, even though he would have to go out and face those crowds every day. And how many people passed him and didn't put anything in the dish? How many times did he said, could you help me? And nobody would. And then when somebody would put something in, it would just keep him alive till the next day. It's like a really, really sad story. And this is where we pick up on the story in Mark chapter 10. And they came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. Now this tells us a little bit more about the guy, right? Like, of course he's blind, he's a beggar, he's sitting by the roadside, but it also gives us his family lineage. He's the son of Timaeus, which is really interesting. But think about that. What would it have been like to be that guy sitting by the roadside day after day, unable to see, and just getting the scraps from everybody else? It would have been awful. When was the last time you saw someone begging for money? Maybe you saw them on the road. They're standing on the road, usually at an intersection. They got a cardboard sign that has a sad story on it. Or maybe they're standing in front of a liquor store and they're just begging for your change. Like, what goes through your head in those moments? And if we're going to be honest, it's probably something like, why did this guy make so many poor decisions to be like this? Or why is this guy hanging out by a liquor store and asking for money? Or if I actually give money to this guy, and am I empowering a greater criminal network? I mean, those kind of things are no joke. Now, with that mindset, and you go to the stat book, like, it adds up. Because in 2003, there was 105 drug overdoses with between 70,000 and 80,000 that led to death. Like, that's a big number in the United States. Those drugs came from very highly organized and efficient cartels who, it's a criminal network from top to bottom to get that drug into someone's hand. And many times it's people that have fallen victim to the drugs. They're the ones that end up begging for your money. And so the way that we look at that problem today is the same way that a Jewish person would have looked at the problem. It's just that the reason reason they're looking at it is saying, man, God's judgment is on you. So most people would have wanted to keep like an arm's distance from this guy, just like we would want to keep an arm's distance from some of the people that we can come into contact with today. But check this out. And when he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. As soon as Bartimaeus figured out that it was Jesus that was the one walking by, he started crying out for him. And when people told him to sit down and shut up, he cried out all the more. Now, I want you to imagine something. What is it like for someone to cry out for someone else? Like, cry out, have mercy on me, like that kind of tone. I guarantee you've probably not heard that tone of voice coming from someone, maybe ever. And when he's told to shut up, he just cries out all the more, which is a really big hint for us. And the thing that he cries out for is Jesus, Son of David. What does that mean? That little detail of him saying Jesus, Son of David, that's a big deal. And the reason why is because the Old Testament speaks that Jesus Christ would come from the Son of David, King David. So for him to scream, Jesus, Son of David, that means he knew exactly who he was calling for, and he knew exactly who was standing in front of him. Now, in this society, Bartimaeus is an absolute throwaway. Nobody cares about him. In our culture, it's like the guy holding up a cardboard sign on the side of a liquor store. Nobody sees him. He just blends in. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Nobody really wants to get involved with whatever's going on there. That's how Bartimaeus is living. And yet this is the guy that's calling out for Jesus. You see, he realizes right there that Jesus is the only hope if he's ever going to see again, and then if he's ever going to get rid of the shame. But here's the thing. He can't see Jesus because he's blind. He's not deaf. He's blind. And as he's crying out for Jesus, the crowd's telling him to shut up. The only thing he can keep doing is to keep calling Jesus' name. And what happens? The crowd only knew this guy as a local scumbag who had divine judgment on him because he was blind. This means there wasn't any kindness coming from the crowd at all. They wanted this man to shut up because he was their local zero, and they were embarrassed because of him. But yet, this is what Jesus does. And Jesus stopped and said, call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take heart, get up. He is calling you. You see, Jesus doesn't play by the same rules that you and I do. In fact, you know what he does? As soon as he heard this man calling for him, Jesus stopped and made time and space and spoke back to him. Jesus was a known quantity by this point, who is someone that was able to do the supernatural and the miraculous simply by his speech. Like, just think about that. That's incredible. And yet he was stopping for this bottom feeder, this blind guy who had been a throwaway in all of society. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Once Bartimaeus learned that Jesus wanted a one-on-one with him, what did he do? He stood up, he dropped his coat, and he started running towards Jesus. Now remember, he's blind. He can't see. How in the world does he know where Jesus is if he can't see? Let me give you a hint. He's following his voice. He's taking off his coat saying, I'm leaving whatever I was behind, and now I'm going to follow this guy named Jesus. And Jesus said to him, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man said to him, Rabbi, let me recover my sight. Now, I don't know about you, but this question seems like a Captain Obvious statement. Like a blind guy walks up to you and he starts talking, and yet Jesus still asks the question very particularly. And you have to ask the question, why? Because this is an essential part of this guy's story. And I think the reason why Jesus does this is because it allows the man to unload onto Jesus, to tell Jesus his problem, to tell Jesus what's on his heart. Does Jesus know this already? Of course he does. But there's something about Jesus wanting this man to tell him about what's actually happening. And that's where this healing takes place. And not only would it have been a healing, but this would have been the beginning of a relationship between him and Jesus. And when you think about the faith that it took to realize that this is Jesus walking through, this is my one chance. And when the crowd is saying no, when the crowd is pushing against him, what does he do? He gets up, he fights the crowd. He doesn't care what the crowd has to say. He goes straight to Jesus and he lets his request be made known. Now that is a bold move. Think about the faith that it took as he's standing there in front of Jesus, knowing without a shadow of a doubt that Jesus is able to heal this man's eyes. At the same time, everybody looking at this story is viewing this man as nothing more than a cockroach, as someone that should just go away. So there's a real contrast of class going on, class warfare, wealth gap. There's a huge thing of shame that's happening, like the most shameful person is talking to Jesus in front of everyone else that seems to not have shame, like this means things. Like you can identify with this guy as this story is playing out. And Jesus said to him, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. And just like that, his eyes are open and he can see colors, he can see people, he could see the sky, he could see the ground. And he could see Jesus standing right in front of him. But look at what it says right after this healing. It says that he followed Jesus on the way. Now, there's times in life when you pray for people and blind eyes will become open, like people who can't see all of a sudden actually regain their sight. It's called a miracle and it does happen. I've actually seen this kind of stuff happen myself, and it's absolutely amazing when it takes place. I don't want to take away from that, but what I want to say is I think this goes much deeper, because what's actually happening here is this guy is getting his heart repaired. Like the shame and the anguish that would have been on him, not being able to leave Jericho, not being able to go out other than this little street corner on any given day. Now, what I haven't told you yet is the next place Jesus is going is Jerusalem, and he's going to be crucified this time. Like he's literally going to be given a state-sanctioned death. And this is where this man's walking. And Jesus willingly gave him his eyesight and then took his shame. And as this guy was following Jesus, where did he go? He went to his execution. He went to his crucifixion. But fortunately, the story doesn't end there, because this man would have also seen the risen Christ. And that would have been a sight to behold, man. That would have been awesome. But now, after hearing about that, I want you to focus on yourself for just a second. And I want to ask you this question. How many times has the crowd gotten you down? How many times has the crowd come after you and the crowd has just won? How many times had Bartimaeus had to come out of his house and get rejected and possibly go home with nothing, only to come back the next day and do it again and do it again and do it again? And then what did it take for Bartimaeus to lose that shame? It took an encounter with Jesus. It took Bartimaeus crying out to Jesus and then him listening to his voice. Now, Jesus' interaction with everybody is going to be different because we are all unique. We all have different problems. We all have different things that we need. We're all in a different place. But the one thing that is true is Jesus, on that cross, he took our guilt, he took our sin, and he took our shame. Now, Jesus doesn't make any decisions for you, but what happens in that space is when you start calling out to him, he meets you there. And it's in that space where you start to tell him about all the things that are going on, the things that make you feel shameful and sick and worthless and awful. And that's the thing that he sets straight. Now, the first step for you when you're walking out of this doom loop of toxic shame, you know what it takes? It takes you calling out to Jesus. And what's probably going to happen when that takes place is there's going to be a crowd. What's the crowd in your life? But that crowd is going to be yelling at you. That crowd is going to be telling you to shut up and sit down, because the crowd doesn't want you to get to Jesus. But what you see in the story is Bartimaeus, he didn't listen to that. He cried out for Jesus all the more, and Jesus heard him, and then Bartimaeus followed Jesus' voice. If you cry out to Jesus, Jesus will come to you. Thanks, and I hope this helps.